The U.S. Embassy in Israel has authorized departure for non-essential personnel. That usually doesn't happen unless something is imminent. Do you expect the U.S. to strike Iran this weekend, and will Congress be informed in advance?
Well, that remains unclear. We certainly have taken the position as House Democrats that prior to any military action, the Trump administration should seek authorization for the use of military force in connection with any strikes against Iran that would be the functional equivalent of an act of war.
You spent the better part of this week with your fellow Democrats at a retreat just outside of Washington, D.C. I know that a big focus of your attention was on this affordability agenda. I wonder if you could enumerate just a few points, proposals that you would make should you get the Speaker's gavel, Democrats regain control of the House, on that agenda going forward. What are items that you think you could reasonably pass without breaking the bank?
Well, as House Democrats, we're committed to making life more affordable for the American people. Donald Trump promised to lower the high cost of living on day one. Costs haven't gone down, costs have gone up. In fact, the inflation numbers today show that life continues to get more expensive for the American people because of the Trump administration policies, including the Trump tariffs that have increased costs on everyday Americans by thousands of dollars per year. One of the first things I think that we need to do is to make sure that these tariffs that have been randomly and recklessly put into place by Donald Trump can no longer move forward. And Congress needs to regain its authority on trade and tariff issues. Second, of course, in connection with fixing our broken health care system, we have to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. We're going to continue to fight to do that in the Senate this year. We've passed it, of course, out of the House. All 213 Democrats joined by 17 Republicans. This is a bipartisan issue. And in order to prevent tens of millions of Americans from experiencing dramatically increased health insurance premiums, we have to pass these tax credits so we can drive down the cost. That certainly is also a commitment of House Democrats.
Leader Jeffries, on that to-do list, I reached out to a senior Democrat, former member of the Biden administration, and I said, what would you ask Leader Jeffries? And they said, ask him what the plan is for border control. This is something that most Americans say they want. They want stronger borders. They may disagree with the way the president is going about it, but this is top of the agenda. And this individual said, I don't think Democrats have a plan. Do you? And what is that?
Well, our plan is anchored in several values. We want order at the border, a safe, secure, and strong border. We recognize that we have a broken immigration system and we need to fix it in a comprehensive and bipartisan way. At the same period of time, the American people are appropriately demanding that ICE enforcement is humane, it's fair, and it's just. And that's not what we're seeing right now. ICE is completely and totally out of control, which is why we're fighting for dramatic reforms to the way in which ICE conducts itself that's bold, that's meaningful, and that's transformational, including things like a mandatory requirement that judicial warrants be obtained before ICE agents break into the homes of the American people. We want to make sure that there are independent investigations that state and local elected officials, state and local officials, like, for instance, the attorney generals, can conduct in order to make sure that there's accountability when ICE agents violently break the law. We want to make sure that there's an excessive use of force prohibition policy that's put into place. We have to make sure that sensitive locations like houses of worship, schools, hospitals, and polling sites are protected from overreach by ICE agents or the DHS. Those are some of the policies that we'll continue to fight to achieve.
Should ICE be defunded?
I think we want dramatic reform as it relates to the manner in which ICE conducts itself that's anchored in the principle that taxpayer dollars should be used to make life more affordable for the American people, not to brutalize or kill them, as was the case with Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy. ICE has to be brought under control. Of course, what I've said is that what we need to do, interior enforcement should be fair, just, and humane. That's been the position that I've articulated from the very beginning of this extremism that's being unleashed on the American people. So that is why DHS, as a funding bill, has not moved forward at this point in time, and it will not move forward until there are changes that are bold, meaningful, and dramatic, the types of things that I've articulated.
We've talked about border policy, talked about trade policy, child tax credit. I'm reminded of something that Alyssa Slotkin, the Democratic senator, said recently, which was the suggestion maybe Democrats need a version of Project 2025, a Project 2029, if you will. And I think in saying that, what she's getting at is there needs to be a clear value proposition for the American people to understand what Democrats are offering. Do you agree with her? Is she on to something there? Does there need to be a clearer outline of what Democrats are proposing here going into the midterms of the next presidential election?
Well, I think heading into the midterm elections, what we've made clear is that the American people deserve better. And we've said directly to them, you deserve better than the extremism that has been unleashed on everyday Americans, the assault on the economy, the failures as it relates to the high cost of living, the failures on health care, the failures as it relates to immigration enforcement, and the failures of Donald Trump and Republicans to make life better for the American people because they're so preoccupied with a whole host of other things, including massive tax breaks for their billionaire donors. That's what their one big ugly bill was all about, while at the same period of time, they gutted Medicaid, ripped away SNAP benefits from millions of Americans, and gave ICE a $75 billion slush fund. As Democrats, our approach is going to be very different. We'll be laser focused on driving down the high cost of living, fixing our broken health care system, and cleaning up corruption wherever it's found, in the Congress, at the Supreme Court, and certainly with this administration, the most corrupt in American history.
We're coming into week 2 of that partial government shutdown. You just mentioned all the reforms that you want from DHS, and you're asking your party to hold the line on that. But realistically, as TSA agents start to miss paychecks, as airports slow down, as constituents start to feel the pain of this partial shutdown, do you think members of your caucus will stay strong on this, or will you see defections like you did during the last shutdown?
Well, I think the outcome of the last shutdown was that House Democrats led the effort to pass a straightforward 3-year extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits, and 17 House Republicans joined us, marking the first time in American history that any Republicans in this Congress have voted affirmatively for the Affordable Care Act tax credits or the Affordable Care Act. That was the outcome of our effort to draw a hard line in the sand on behalf of the American people. Now, this time around, we've basically made clear that it's unfortunate that Donald Trump and Republicans in the Congress have decided that they would rather shut down FEMA, shut down the Coast Guard, and shut down TSA as opposed to enacting the type of bold, meaningful, and dramatic changes that will help transform DHS and its enforcement agencies in a manner that is consistent with our values.
But do you think your party is united enough to hold that line? And who is the leader of the Democratic Party right now?
I'm the House Democratic leader. We've got great members of the House Democratic Caucus as well that are leading in a wide variety of different ways. It's not my job to make determinations as to who's the Democratic Party leader. What I can tell you is that Democrats have won elections consistently for the last 14 months. And so whoever the leader may be, he or she is doing a great job, because literally we haven't lost a meaningful election in the entirety of the Trump administration, winning races up and down the ballot across the country in places like New Jersey, in New York, in Virginia, in California, certainly during the off-year elections last November, in Mississippi, in Georgia, 3 state Supreme Court races that we swept in Pennsylvania, and then went on to win races in Florida, the Miami mayor's race for the first time in 30 years, and of course these special elections that we've seen dramatic overperformance, most recently in Texas by 31 points, and then in Louisiana, the home state of Mike Johnson and Steve Scalise, by 37 points in terms of an overperformance from the Trump number. So collectively, we're going to continue to message and communicate to the American people our values, juxtapose that with the extremism that the Republicans are unleashing on the American people, and let the chips fall where they may.
A question about messaging,
we
if I
clearly
can interrupt there just quickly, about messaging, and you're getting to this point. That is, I think there are a lot of people who are keen to run against and maybe support candidates who are running against the policies of this president. There are others who are looking for the Democrats to promote and campaign on policies of their own. What is your counsel to your caucus, those running, on how to find that balance between those two things, being anti-Trump and being pro whatever the Democratic Party is offering?
For something.
Yes. Democrats?
Well, I think what's been obvious over the last 14 months, and certainly this was the case, no longer deniable by people who suggest that Democrats don't have a message, is that what has united us is the issue of affordability and our commitment to actually drive down the high cost of living. That was the case in New Jersey. That was the case in Virginia. That was the case in New York. Three very different type of candidates, all united around the affordability issue, because we believe there are far too many people. We're talking about millions of folks in this country who are working hard and who are playing by the rules, but who are unable to get by. They certainly aren't able to get ahead. They can't thrive, and they are barely surviving. And that's unacceptable in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. And we believe that when you do those things, when you work hard and when you play by the rules, you should be able to live an affordable life, a comfortable life, live the good life. And we define that very clearly. Good paying jobs, good housing, good health care, a good education for your children, and when it's all said and done, a good retirement. That's what House Democrats are fighting hard to achieve for the American people.
I want to ask you about one of your Republican colleagues. Texas Republican Tony Gonzalez is facing criticism over allegations of an affair he had with a former staffer who later died by suicide. He has so far resisted calls to step down. Should he resign?
So these are extremely disturbing and very serious allegations, and it requires a very serious investigation. And it's my understanding that the Office of Congressional Counsel is in the midst of that investigation and, in fact, may be prepared to issue a report to us as members of Congress as early as Wednesday of next week. And once that report has been issued to us, then all options should certainly be on the table based on what the conclusions are in terms of that investigation.
I want to ask you about a piece in the Washington Post about an executive order the president's reportedly considering. I'm going to read a quote here from Peter Tickton, who is someone who's pushing for this executive order. He said, if the president were to declare a national emergency to grant him power over elections, that would empower the president to ban mail ballots and voting machines as the vectors of foreign interference. So effectively, the argument the administration would be making is, as they see it, there was foreign interference, although not proven in the last election. That's grounds for the president to take more control of future elections. What are you going to do as the Democratic leader in the House if the president goes down that path?
Well, it's a crackpot conspiracy theory, and we will not allow it to be brought to life. Certainly, we won't allow it to be brought to life legislatively, where the president threatened to abandon the way in which elections have been conducted for the better part of almost 250 years here in this country, and try to nationalize them. This so-called Save America Act is dead on arrival in the Senate. It's not going anywhere. And this effort to abuse the notion of an emergency authority has already been defeated multiple times by the Supreme Court, a very conservative Supreme Court. The president tried to use emergency authority to federalize the National Guard. We, of course, sued him, took it all the way up to the Supreme Court, and he was denied that ability, which is why the president was forced to pull out of places like Oregon, California, and Illinois. The president claimed the authority to unilaterally issue tariffs that are hurting businesses, hurting entrepreneurs, and certainly hurting farmers and consumers. We took that up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, including 3 very conservative justices, declared clearly that the president did not have that emergency authority with respect to tariffs and declared them unlawful and unconstitutional. And in the same vein, we'll use every tool available, including suing the heck out of him if he tries to go down this road, to prevent him from trying to rig the midterm elections, because he knows his presidency has been a failure, his policies have been a failure, and Republicans have failed America.
Leader Jeffries, we've talked about the Democratic message. Let me ask you about what we've heard from the president on the campaign trail. This is a refrain he's used over and over again. Let me play it.
You got to win the midterms, because if we don't win the midterms, it's just going to be, I mean, they'll find a reason to impeach me. I'll get impeached.
You called this the most corrupt administration in history. I wonder if you think impeachment is inevitable, and as you listen to Americans, maybe there are those who are worried about the fact that you have one administration impeaching the president, one Congress impeaching the president, the administration switches, that could happen back and forth over and over again. Are you willing to rule out or commit to not impeaching the president if you were to get the Speaker's gavel?
Yeah, what I'm willing to commit to is that we are going to fight hard to drive down the high cost of living. We believe that affordability is the core issue that the American people want us to address.
But about impeachment, is that something you're ruling out?
What I'm saying, our priority is, we're not ruling anything in and we're not ruling anything out. It's all premature. What we're focused on is a commitment to making sure we make life more affordable for the American people and fix our broken healthcare system. Now, of course, there's got to be accountability. This is the most corrupt administration in American history. And right now, we are focused on delivering that accountability in terms of the administration directly to Kristi Noem, who we've called to be fired. And if she's not fired, we are committed to commencing impeachment proceedings against her. And we've just got to convince a handful of our Republican colleagues to do the right thing. She's a disaster. She's a stone-cold liar. She called Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy domestic terrorists. She's unleashed these poorly trained agents to brutalize law-abiding immigrant families and American citizens, in some cases killing them. And she clearly has to go.
Leader Jeffries, before we let you go, next week you're going to compel a vote of the full House on the bipartisan Massey War Powers resolution. I want to ask you, I've covered Washington a long time. War Powers Act seems to come up constantly, regardless of whether it's a Democratic or Republican administration. Is this a performative act at this point? Because frankly, if the president decides to bomb Iran or capture the president of Venezuela, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, well, what we have to do as the Article I branch of government is reclaim our authority as a separate and co-equal branch, which unfortunately our Republican colleagues have declined to do. In fact,
so how can you do that?
Well, we can do it by beginning to actually bring legislation to the floor that is consistent with the values of our framers. They gave the House of Representatives the authority as it relates to appropriations because they knew taxation and spending were particularly important, and the House was the closest institution to the people. They also gave us the authority as it relates to trade and tariffs, and they gave us the authority as it relates to the power to declare war. And unfortunately, over time, we've seen an erosion of Congress exercising that authority. And our commitment on behalf of the American people is to regain that.
But can you do anything to stop a president who decides to take military action like this?
We have to do everything that we can on behalf of the American people, because the American people clearly know that the last thing we need at this moment, when they literally are struggling, having to choose between paying rent, buying groceries, or getting to go see a doctor when they need one, this is unacceptable in this country. And the last thing we need is another failed foreign forever war, which certainly would be the outcome if Donald Trump decides to get us entangled in Iran and the Middle East.
The Democratic leader in the House, my fellow Brooklynite, Hakeem Jeffries, joining us from Washington. Representative Jeffries, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.